end.
Budget 2024 has come to an end. Of course, we've heard so many new developments in all of the sectors being presented by Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, a number of new improvements. Of course, we've seen massive allocations to all of the sectors across Guyana. Just to give you a brief recap of some of the things presented by Minister Singh just a few moments ago. First of all, we want to let you know that the budget for 2024 is now $1.146 trillion. The first time a $1 trillion budget has been passed in Guyana. Of course, this budget is being financed with no new taxes and, of course, is the largest budget ever presented in the National Assembly here in Guyana. But, of course, the Senior Minister took some time to recap 2023 and reminded us that the GDP, of course, for Guyana was slated at somewhere around 33% in 2023, with a stronger than expected expansion in the non-oil sector of 11.7%. We saw $204 billion being allocated to roads and bridges and a number of other things that we will discuss later on. But with me right now, I have one of the councillors at the Georgetown Mayor and City Council who will be joining me to share his thoughts on Budget 2024. That person is none other than Mr. Alfonso Diarmas. Mr. Diarmas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Shaquan, for having me.
Now, you've been in the chambers when the budget was being presented. Walk us through your thoughts on the entire budget 2024.
So I'll be very brief. I thought it was an extremely well thought out, well crafted budget that avoided the trap of instituting or creating a lot of recurring expenditure that in years to come could be subject to volatile oil prices, for example. Instead, the budget focused more on wealth creation through things like skill development. We saw that goal received an additional subvention, which is great. Educating people. Education is really the best way to drive wealth generation by developing new skills. So that I thought was one of the highlights of the budget.
Yeah, we saw $78 billion going to housing, more than $22 billion going to water, a number of the sectors. Tell us which one of these sectors stood out to you most of all.
So housing and infrastructure, because I think a lot of people don't quite understand the impact that being able to afford your own house, or owning your own house has on wealth creation. Being able to go to the bank and request a loan, that alone is a huge thing in terms of infrastructure. The impact of opening up new roads and new lands, that too has quite a telling impact on wealth, on family wealth. For example, a new road that's built will have the impact of increasing the value of existing property, which you can then leverage at the bank for financing to create your own business, etc. And that is how wealth is created, not through government handouts.
Definitely. Mr. Diarmas, just before you go, we know as well you're a businessman. We saw support for small businesses as well being implemented in this year's budget. Talk a little bit about how impactful you think that will be.
Listen, I saw that one of the measures, or one of the things that are being done, is that government is partnering with commercial banks to lower the interest rates on loans up to $5 million, if I remember correctly. There were a lot of numbers thrown out in this budget, but I think that's the correct figure. And again, that is a very well thought out position, because a huge barrier to wealth creation in Guyana is access to finance. So by doing this and keeping interest rates low on new borrowers, on the lower income borrowers, would have a big impact again on wealth creation, and as a consequence on upward mobility and class mobility.
Definitely. Mr. Diarmas, thank you so much for taking some time to share your thoughts here with us.
Thank you, Shaquan, for having me.
You've just heard from Mr. Alfonso Diarmas, one of the councillors there at the Georgetown Mayor and City Council. Some of the other things we saw was in relation to the Natural Resource Fund and the oil revenues being used to further expand and improve on developmental areas. And joining me now is Mr. Ryan Alexander, who, of course, sits on the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee of the Natural Resource Fund. Mr. Alexander, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Shikwan.
Now, you've heard everything that has been presented in the budget earlier today. Share your general thoughts with us.
Well, I would like to once again thank the government for presenting such a rounded budget, clinical, another successive year of a rounded budget that will see all the different ministries, all the different regions across Guyana benefiting, and the people of Guyana most so benefiting from the resources that has been compiled by Guyana, has been blessed by God to Guyana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We saw investments and the oil revenues being used to further capital projects like infrastructure, health, education. What do you think about the government's intentional effort to spend these oil revenues on these capital projects?
Well, Shikwan, in any developing country, infrastructure is a critical role. Health services, education, all of these things play a critical role in how a country develops with its human capital. And the infrastructure that is going to be built out is only can improve the accessibility of services and products across the length and breadth of Guyana. As you know, Guyana geographically is a widespread country.
Yeah.
We have been lacking that type of infrastructure. That has been hamburging our growth and development in rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
But with this opportunity of revenue that we have, and with the plans that the government of Guyana has put together to spend in the different ministries, I can only see Guyana moving upwards and continually moving upwards. I'm happy to be a Guyanese.
Definitely. Mr. Alexander, just before you go, any other sector that you want to touch on that stood out to you in the budget presentation?
Well, the non-productive sector, the agriculture sector, business, I'm from the business area. I am more than happy to see the money that is being put into that area. Training to see that more young people and even persons who are being retooled can come out and now be more beneficiary to the workforce of Guyana. It's only right for the Guyanese to benefit from the opportunities of earning in Guyana.
Definitely. Mr. Alexander, thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us.
Don't mention. Anytime, Shikwan.
You heard from Mr. Alexander, who is sitting on the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, sharing his thoughts on the spending, the expenditure of the oil revenues here in Guyana. What we also saw were several measures aimed at the cost of living. We saw $7 billion being allocated specifically to cost of living measures. Of course, the Because We Care cash grant in conjunction with the school uniform allowance also increased the total $45,000 and a number of other measures. But to speak to us a little bit more on the economic impact that this will have, I have with me in studio Mr. Joel Bagundin, who is a financial analyst. Mr. Bagundin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Mr. Bagundin, first of all, we've heard $1.146 trillion. Your thoughts on this budget?
Well, it builds on, it's consistent with the level of increase, year-over-year increase, compared to the 2023 budget relative to 2022. So there is consistency there. What is especially important in this budget is that it has an extended menu of measures aimed at stimulating increased disposable income at the household level, widening that menu of measures, and prior to giving remarks here on budget 2024 insight, I would have done some analysis on the impact of measures implemented from 2020 to 2023 for cost of living, which amounted to nearly $200 billion annually. So building on top of that, based on my quick calculations, I still have to disaggregate the numbers in more detail, but based on my quick calculation, it is an additional $70 to $80 billion. Conservatively, I still have to disaggregate that. It's probably more. That would be transferred directly to household in a variety of different ways, not necessarily direct cash transfer, but in a variety of many different ways, as you've just heard all the different measures there. So later on, later on, maybe on your program or in my writings, you'll see I'll disaggregate those numbers and you'll see more detailed analysis on that.
Yeah. So, then we saw an expectation of 34.3% that is expected in terms of real GDP growth in 2024. For the common man, explain what this can mean for Guyana and for Guyanese.
So what it means, as I said earlier in the pre-commentary right here, is that growth, first of all, we're the only country in the world that has had consistent double digits growth above 20%. And we expect, based on everybody's forecast, World Bank, IMF, my own forecast, we expect that to remain consistent until maybe 2028. What that means for the average person is that there will be no shortage of opportunities.
Yeah.
There'll be absolutely no shortage of opportunities. It means there is increase in productive activities, increase in commerce, increase in economic activities across all the sectors. Whether you're a service provider, whether you're in mining, whether you're in construction, whatever field you're in, there is no shortage of opportunities.
Yeah.
So that is what growth means. Growth means increased spending, increased opportunities, increased investment, which create more opportunities, which create more job opportunities, and which enable an entrepreneurial environment for people to get into, explore all sorts of opportunities and venture into different things to diversify your sources of income.
Yeah.
So that is what it means.
Mr. Bagman, before you go, any other area that stood out to you from Budget 2024, any sector?
Well, for me, it's because I'm always conscious of the need for future development, investing in the economy for future sustainable growth. What is impressive is again, like last year, the largest sectoral budget, which is for the infrastructure sector, which is just over $200 billion. That is critical. Those investments in road, transport, infrastructure, public infrastructure, of course, healthcare, the health sector, education sector, those are important investment that we need to accelerate today and build that foundation today to sustain and enable future sustainable growth for present generation, the younger generation that is coming up.
Definitely. Mr. Bagundin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Bagundin, who is a financial analyst and spoke to the economic development that is coming on in Guyana. The private sector continues to play a pivotal role in Guyana's development. We saw construction grow in the last year by more than 20%, and of course the non-oil sector performing exceptionally well in the last year. Joining me, I have three distinguished gentlemen. First of all, the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, Mr. Kamal Singh, and he is being joined by two individuals from the Private Sector Commission as well, Mr. Himwan Prasad, the treasurer of the Private Sector Commission, and Mr. Naitaram Ramnarine, who is the executive director. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
If I can start with you, Mr. Singh, construction has seen a massive boom. It is expected that will continue in the new year. What are your thoughts overall on the private sector's involvement in ensuring that Budget 2024 is transformational?
Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. And I think from a private sector standpoint, we are very, very excited on this budget. 2023 budget, we have seen significant development in our country throughout every single sector. 2024, this budget, based on what we have seen today, it's even a big springboard from 2023 into 2024. The construction sector, it is critical that we have money spent and allocated in the construction sector. We cannot develop our nation and our economy if we're not having the proper infrastructure in place. And I think government allocation this year into the construction sector, I think is going to be a significant boost to the economy and to every single sector. Right now we're having a lot of hiccups going into interior, for example. The guys who work in the logging industry are currently having extremely high costs of their operation because of when the rainy season they cannot get in and out easily. When those roads are developed, which we've seen since last year, those roads started to develop already, When more of those roads are developed and we go more deeper down into the rural communities, it's going to help development in a significant way. And I think from that standpoint, we're very excited when we saw the number that was disclosed today in 2024 budget for the infrastructure sector.
Definitely. If I can hear from you, Mr. Prasad, your thoughts generally on budget 2024.
Well, budget 2024 is an excellent budget. It has highlighted the priority areas of the government, especially in healthcare, in infrastructure, and the other area was education, capacity building, which we definitely need across all sectors in Guyana. So I think it's a wonderful budget. It will set the platform for transforming Guyana.
Mr. Ramnarayan, if I can ask you, we saw specific allocations towards small businesses and ensuring that small businesses grow and can expand and, of course, play a role in the private sector. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts about government supporting these small and medium-sized businesses.
Okay, so from a private sector standpoint, I must say that it is commendable that the government has actually increased the budget for the Small Business Bureau and also the Small Business Fund. That being said, from the private sector side, even the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, this has been one of the items high on their agenda that they has been pushing. That is from the private sector end. So, in answering your question directly, it is quite commendable to see that the budgetary allocation has actually been increased this year, 2024, in the national budget.
Mr. Ramnarayan, if I can stay with you, any other sector that you've seen today that is commendable, that points out, that stands out to you from today's presentation?
So, not directly, I would not comment directly on the sectors, but in terms of promoting and enhancing cost of living measures in Guyana. That is very commendable from the government to see a number of fiscal incentives that has been allocated or driven towards the alleviating the cost of living challenges that are being faced by many Guyanese. So it's actually commendable to see that there are multiple measures that is to alleviate the many struggles that are faced by Guyanese.
Before your thoughts generally, any other thought on any other sector from today?
I think we must commend the government on the budget. It's an exceptional budget, and we look forward to working with them in implementing most of their projects and policies.
Mr. Singh, closing remarks.
Over the last years, we have seen tremendous pressure in so many areas, in skills, in our workplace employment, to make sure that our employees are properly compensated. The threshold that we've seen here right now will actually reach a lot of these small employees. I think that's a commendable stuff. As it relates to the overall budget, we are very, very elated, and the Trump just mentioned, on the SMEs. Our economy is developing rapidly at this point in time, and a lot of these small businesses are finding a lot of challenge in accessing funds. So the money that has been allocated under that area right now is going to help these small businesses to develop significantly. And I think that is very commendable. When a government can put a budget in place that's going to meet the ordinary man on the street, it speaks volume, and it speaks that the government is very caring and they're very concerned about the ordinary man on the street and not just the bigger businesses. And I think this budget overall touches every single sector in our economy. And not just touch it touches it in a significant way. And the significant way is to make sure that the money is spent in those sectors to develop it, to make sure we have more sustainability in our economy, to make sure that our economy and those sectors can grow to meet the needs of our local and international market that we're projecting by 2030.
Of course, gentlemen, from the Private Sector Commission, I want to thank you so much for spending some time dissecting the budget 2024. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You've heard from these gentlemen, several of them from the Private Sector Commission, who've spoken about their thoughts surrounding Budget 2024. We continue our coverage here on the National Communications Network, bringing to you information relating to Budget 2024, which was just presented some time ago by Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashni Singh. With me in studio now, I have Dr. Randy Prasad, who is the Presidential Advisor on International Affairs, and he also will share some thoughts on Budget 2024. Dr. Prasad, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, it's a record-breaking budget, $1.1 trillion. It's a balanced budget. There is continuing commitment to infrastructure development, but there's also serious renewal of the PPP's manifesto promises in making it a people-centered budget. We clearly see that. What I particularly like, before the budget was presented, I was on this show and I said the one thing that I'm looking forward to is the investment in human capital. I think the budget does that in so many different ways. The parts on UG, that's clearly there. Everybody wants that to happen. The Gold Scholarship, the Ministry of Education budget is brilliant. It covers so much ground, from building out schools to training teachers to bringing in new technologies. The healthcare sector, also 12 hospitals being built, new equipment, new training. And I actually love the interaction between Leader Norton and Minister Singh, when Leader Norton was saying, well, we're training them and they're going away. And Minister Singh said, you know what, they're all Guyanese. And it's a free country, it's a democratic country. We train them because they're Guyanese, they're entitled to that. If they want to go and make their fortunes elsewhere, they're welcome to do so. Chances are, they're very likely to come back. So overall, I think this is not only the biggest budget ever, it is really grounded in solid macroeconomic theory, but at the same time, it is a people-oriented budget.
Dr. Prasad, our GDP is expected to grow by more than 30%.
Yes.
That is per capita and in other areas. What will this do, and what does government's investment in these areas say about Guyana being placed on the top of the list very soon in terms of our international ranking?
Right. Listen, there's often in education and so much made about rankings. In a way, that's an important thing. But really what matters, let's take the substantive part of the question. What does this do for our people? For Guyanese and for residents of Guyana? Look at it this way. You get a house lot. You get a house lot and immediately, right, you have equity in your hand once you've got the title. You've got equity in your hand. That allows you to go to a bank and to actually get a loan in which you can invest in a small business. In other words, this budget, 30,000 house lots have been given out already since the PPP took over in 2020. 50,000, the target for 50,000 is on board. I'm only taking housing as one area. What happens there? Well, people are building wealth.
Right.
The wealth that ordinary folks are able to accumulate in a very short period of time, largely because of market forces and all of the attention in Guyana, the investment attention, right? People are able to build long-term wealth in the form of home ownership. That would take them generations to build otherwise. On top of that, incomes are also rising. All of us would like, in a way, to see incomes rise faster. But there's a heavy price to be paid for economic populism, which is, spend, 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 even if you can't afford it. That's what's brought down so many other countries with great promises before in the world. We're not going to do that, and this budget does not do that.
Definitely. Dr. Randy Prasad, thank you so much for spending some time with us, of course. Any final comments you want to make before you go?
It is a transformational budget, and it is, Minister Singh is right. It is based on a paradigm of widespread consultation with the people all across the country. It is not a budget that was hatched in an office with a few special interest people and politicals. This is a budget of the people. It is a budget drawn from outreaches all across all the regions. I've attended many of them myself, and so I can tell you from first-hand experience, this is a budget that was arrived at through consultation. And because of that, it has widespread legitimacy.
Dr. Prasad, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Randy Prasad, advisor to the President on International Affairs. That has been a lot of the coverage and a lot of the conversations that have been surrounding Budget 2024. 2024. Of course, before we go, we want to let you know as well that $4.6 billion in budget 2024 was allocated for the advancement of sports in Guyana. In the area of healthcare, a lot of people are concerned about their health and what is going to be happening in that area. Some $129.8 billion have been allocated for the advancement and continued transformation of the healthcare sector, with education seeing some $135.2 billion. That has been our coverage for Budget 2023. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Shaquan Gill, and I'm saying goodbye for now.